Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet.
First of all, I want to correct the statement my colleague made that my objections were to the substance or content of the two witnesses that are now departed. My objection, as I stated before, was that if we are not going to observe the right to cross-examine witnesses that are providing substantive testimony before this committee, then we should strike that. And that is the practice in federal courts when much is at stake. And it is a device that ensures that when people take a stand and offer evidence, that we can test the veracity of their statements. But that is not the case in this hearing. The chair and the majority have chosen to allow witnesses to offer substantive testimony here and then have allowed them to scurry away and not face cross-examination or the testing of the statements they have made. You know, it's ironic that we began this hearing with a Pledge of Allegiance. We all stood and put our hands on our hearts and looked at the flag. Then we turned around and we eviscerated the very process here that would protect rights, protect the integrity of this hearing, to elicit the truth and to test the statements and testimony that are brought before us. This is such a departure. This is such a departure from regular order and the usual process of congressional hearings that I'm compelled to strike that, to ask to strike that testimony, because it's not worth anything if it can't be tested. Congress or the American people should not be able to rely on that information if it is not tested, not truthful. And so, Mr. Chairman, I resume my motion to adjourn, and I ask for a recorded vote.
The gentleman moves to adjourn. The committee will suspend while we prepare to have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Chair, may the time be suspended, please, for that?
It is suspended.
It's still going, clock going
Oh,
down.
the clock for Mr. Yeah, we will hold the time for Mr.
Thank
Lynch.
you.
We'll get the clerk out here and we'll have the vote.
Mr. Jordan, point of inquiry.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I've testified before committee even during the 2 years I was out of Congress, and you and I have been here for more than a decade together. Have we ever cross-examined a current U.S. Senator who testified before any committee that you or I were on?
Nope, we have not.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Clerk,
debating the
clerk, I
point of
understand.
order.
No, it was
asking
as a
the
point of
question.
inquiry. I just asked the question of the
Clerk
chairman.
will call the roll on the gentleman's motion from Massachusetts.
Mr. Jordan.
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa. No. Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Massey. No. Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Stewart. Ms. Stefanik. No. Ms. Stefanik votes no. Mr. Gates. Mr. Gates votes no. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Stubbe. Mr. Stubbe votes no. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop votes no. Ms. Kamak. Ms. Kamak votes no. Ms. Hageman. No. Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Pascat. Mr. Lynch.
Yes.
Mr. Lynch votes yes. Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez votes aye. Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Aye.
Ms. Wasserman Schultz votes aye. Mr. Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. Connolly votes aye. Mr. Garamendi. Mr. Allred. Ms. Garcia.
Aye.
Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Goldman.
Aye.
Mr. Goldman votes aye.
Mr. Chair, how am I recorded?
Ms. Pascat, you are not recorded.
I vote aye.
Ms. Pascat votes aye. Mr. Stewart, you're not recorded. Mr. Stewart votes no.
All members voted. Clerk will report.
Mr. Chair, there are 7 ayes and 12 noes.
Motion fails. The gentleman is recognized for the remainder of his 5
Point
minutes
of
of question.
inquiry. Mr. Chairman, point of
The
inquiry.
gentlelady is recognized from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to unconfuse the record. I mean, sometimes I hear you talk about Mr. Landry as appearing as a former member of Congress, and sometimes I hear you saying was Louisiana Attorney General. So
Those are both true statements.
those are two statements, but in what capacity was he testifying today? As a
It's
former
testifying as a,
member or as an elected state official?
he was testifying as a witness in front of the Subcommittee on the Weaponization of Government. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for his 2
capacity,
minutes
sir?
and 17 seconds remaining in his 5 minutes of
In
questioning.
what capacity, sir?
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I should get an answer in what capacity he was here.
He was in the capacity of a witness in front of our committee. That was his capacity.
Attorney General.
Yeah, the gentleman from Massachusetts is
So
recognized.
has the president now said that any state official that
Precedent's
comes
now
is going
set
to
that
be
the gentleman
excused?
from Massachusetts is recognized for the remainder of his 5 minutes of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I would.
Regular order.
Answer.
Mr. Seligman, in the Missouri versus Biden complaint, today's witnesses, who are now departed, claimed that a February 2022 Department of Homeland Security threat bulletin somehow harmed them by warning that online disinformation could lead to real physical threats. I ask unanimous consent to introduce this February 7, 2022 National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin. for
Without
the record.
objection.
Mr. Seligman, this warning obviously was not far-fetched, as evidenced by the events of January 6th. Members of the extremist groups like Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and 3%ers did not hesitate in calling for perpetrating violence on the basis of false or misleading election fraud narratives, and we need only to remember the chants of "Hang Mike Pence" outside this U.S. Capitol. I would also underscore that more than 60 lawsuits brought by President Trump and his supporters, especially Rudy Giuliani, following the 2020 presidential election failed because they lacked evidence to support them. Professor Seligman, do you agree that false or misleading narratives about the substantive election fraud could lead to calls for violence around elections?
Yes, I do.
Professor Seligman, the witness that were sitting next to you seemed to think that it is censorship for DHS to warn that online disinformation